Today I'm going to be reviewing Dordogne, a French game from 2023. The first thing you'll notice about Dordogne when you play it is how good looking it is. The watercolor style is absolutely gorgeous, and it makes for an excellent backdrop for the story. Occasionally, the watercolor objects can look a little weird when interacting with each other. Often they clip into each other, and that doesn't look amazing, but I think it has a lot of charm, since this was made by quite a small development team. What I'm not such a big fan of is the overlay style. I think it's really just passable. The scribble design on the button prompts in particular is something I think looks a bit tacky, and honestly I think they could do much better. However, on the whole, the visual style of this game is amazing, and I think it's one of the biggest selling points for it. Looking at the game from a gameplay standpoint, I think it's relatively simple. It relies on some small interactive puzzles and basic traversal, but that's really it. It's not very challenging, but it is engaging, and it's a great facilitator for the actual narrative. One thing I definitely do regret though, is choosing to play the game with keyboard and mouse rather than controller. It ended up being very hard to do quite a lot of the game, since you often have to move both of the protagonist's hands at the same time. When both hands are controlled by the mouse, this means that you can only move one at once, which makes all of the puzzles this gameplay mechanic is involved in extremely difficult. I'd highly recommend you do the opposite of what I did and play the game with a controller. As for the story, which is the main way people would stick around for the game, I think it's pretty good. It revolves around the protagonist Mimi revisiting her grandmother's house after she's died, which she hasn't been to since she was a child, and then the story alternates between Mimi in the present and her in the past visiting her grandma over the summer. A lot of the story is told through objects. In the present day, Mimi gets texts on her phone from her father, mother, and probably partner, and all of those texts are pretty good at furthering her character, though they don't exactly sell me on the other three. The texts are an okay storytelling device. The more important one in the present day are the letters. I think they're really useful at telling the story of the past, and what happened between Mimi's grandmother, grandfather, and the boy Renaud who she meets in her childhood flashbacks. Objects are also used to tell the story in the past. Specifically, some tapes which you find around the game. These tapes record conversations between Mimi's grandmother and grandfather, who's already passed away even in the flashbacks. It's really great at selling him as a character and showing the relationship between the two of them, which in turn is really great at selling Mimi's grandmother Nora as the main character for Mimi to bounce off of throughout the game. All in all of the characters who have a major role, Mimi, Nora, Mimi's grandfather Edouard, and Renaud, are all really great characters. So that's a huge positive this game has going for it. The scrapbook is the final object through which the story is told, only in this case, the player themselves get to contribute to the story through their creativity. The only issue with this is the lack of options in the scrapbook itself. You can't change the size of the images or anything like that, you can't choose what goes on top of each other, and you can't put multiple things in at the same time. So while it's a good idea in concept, I think it's a little bit disappointing. Some of the flashback sequences are really creative, and I thought that was one of the best parts of the game. In particular, there's an underwater sequence near the end of the game, which is truly spectacular. Visually, it's absolutely stunning, and as a moment in the story, I can honestly say it's the best part of the game. In fact, everything after this point is also excellent, with the ending in particular being really quite sweet, as Mimi finds a letter from her grandmother which she was clearly supposed to read much earlier on in her life. This letter also outlines the main theme of the game, which is the idea of living your life to the fullest through freedom. I think it's a pretty good theme, but it could go in a bit more depth, and there are a couple of other themes which feel like they're sort of coming in, but they never actually go anywhere, and honestly, I think that's a shame. The last part of the game I'd like to touch on is the music. I think it's absolutely excellent. There isn't really any particular track I dislike, and all in all, I'll definitely listen to it outside of the game every now and again. The voice acting and sound design in general are just passable, but the music is absolutely stellar, so from an audio aspect, this game is very good. Overall, Dordogne is a pretty great game, and I'd recommend it to anyone who likes a fun, short story in gaming. I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. Thanks for watching.